Life is hard, but it's not bad. It's part of our process. We have to have it in order to get through that sorrow, in order to get through that valley. It's just something that has to be faced. Otherwise, if we push it away, it just is going to eat us up. It's not going to yield anything good for us if we don't face it.
Welcome back to Happiness in Progress. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award winner, former journalist, mom, wife, and just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. This podcast is brought to you by the Mail Tribune. You can find more podcasts at mailtribune.com. I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest. Treva Kuyper Runyan is the founder of Not Just a Widow. She is a mom. She is a wife. She was the director of the Loft for teen girls for 8 years, and she's also a children's muralist. I'm so excited about this conversation today because she was so authentic and so real. Today we talked about losing her late husband, how she was able to walk out of that grief, how people who are watching their friends grieve can help them and stand with them. She gave a lot of advice about self-care and being able to find joy and hope and all of those things that you expect out of life again after going through one of the worst case scenarios in life. I really think you are going to learn a lot in this conversation, and I just so appreciate Treva for everything she shared with us, and so let's get to it. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad you are here today. Tell me a little bit about your story of losing your husband.
Well, and yesterday's news with Kobe Bryant has really made my heart so heavy.
Brought up a lot of emotions.
Yes. So in March of 2017, my husband was killed in a car accident, and my son was driving the car. And so he had taken our boys, I have 3 kids, he had taken our two boys out hunting in Klamath Falls, and my son had his permit at the time, and they had spent the afternoon. It was just a great fun day, but they had spent the afternoon driving around to different ponds. They were going goose hunting, having such a good day on a Friday, and I can't remember if they were on their way home or not, but they were on Highway 97, which takes a lot of lives, and trying to pass a truck, and didn't make it. The car rolled down the highway, and my husband was gone in probably about 10 minutes. And my boys survived the crash, and their best friend and our dog. And I got the phone call from my son, who was screaming in the phone. My oldest, my daughter, she's almost 21 now, but she was at home with me. She had just gotten home from school. She was a senior in high school, and she had just gotten home, and we got the phone call, and I just remember just shaking from the news, and it's that thing where it's still a little PTSD when I get phone calls from my kids now. They're both in college. My 2 older are in college now, so when I get a phone call, take that deep breath, and just to hear the calm, "Hi, Mom," instead of the screaming. And we rushed to Klamath Falls, which felt like, so many hours to get there, but they were at my boys were at the emergency room in Klamath Falls. And I didn't find out that my husband didn't make it until we got to the hospital, because they won't tell you over the phone. They're not allowed to tell you over the phone. So I had to wait till I got to the emergency room, and the chaplain pulled me aside and said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, but your husband didn't make it." And it was almost like a Grey's Anatomy slow motion.
Like you don't think it really happens.
Yeah, it was the weirdest, most surreal moment. My daughter was with me. We hadn't gotten into the hospital room where my boys were. And she just screamed and climbed up the side of me. It was just so hard. Yeah. And I think that's why even yesterday's news, no matter what the outcome is, what the situation is, the circumstance or whatever, when I hear that there is an accident and lives are lost, precious lives, known or unknown, precious lives, I go back to that moment of finding out. And anybody that finds out that they have just become a widow, it's just the most heart-wrenching moment. And everything after that was very, very slow motion. And there were a lot of doctors that wanted to talk to me, and my boys were okay, which is what is phenomenal.
Wow.
My son who was driving just had scratches. And then my other son was 12, our youngest, and he broke his heel. But they were okay in that we weren't in the hospital for more than a few hours, and they got to come home.
Wow.
And so...
What is it like to be dealing with this excruciating pain yourself and also being a mom?
Oh, it's the worst. I think as a mom, when our kids skin their knee or they stub their toe or somebody at school has bullied them and hurts them, we want to come up with a solution, whether it's a Band-Aid or we're going to go have a conversation with someone at the school, right? And we try to find the solution to fix it. But in this situation of them losing their dad, the way that they lost him, being a widow, there's no fixing it. You can't. And I was just telling my friend today that my daughter was having a hard time yesterday. She really, really, really missed her daddy. It'll be 3 years in March. And those moments, the only thing I can say is, I am so sorry. There's nothing I can do to fix it. I can be there for them and love them and walk alongside them, but it's their journey that they have to walk. It's heart-wrenching. It's the hardest thing I've ever done as a mom. And the night that we came home, we didn't stay at our house. That was just too difficult. We stayed at their grandparents' house. And I didn't sleep much that night. And my kids they were all in one room. They were 18, 15, and 12 years old. They were all in one room, gathered together, trying to sleep, but each one of them would wail at different moments of the night. And I would go in there and I would hold them and cry with them and say, I'm sorry, but you're kind of at a loss that there's nothing that you can say to make it feel better. Mm-hmm. So
and it doesn't feel better for you.
No. It's like if, we're bleeding because we're hurting as moms, as wives, and then we also have to give to our kids. It's really interesting. It's like if everybody has a stomach flu all at the same time in your house, who do you go to first? It's really, really difficult.
You've talked about on Facebook about putting the oxygen mask on yourself.
Yes.
And I'm just thinking about this oxygen mask. That'd be so easy if it were just like a mask you could put on and then you were good. Right. Tell me a little bit about the process for you of kind of trying to mend your heart to be able to then focus on them.
Mm-hmm. Well, my faith has always been really strong. My husband's faith was really strong. And so I just turned to the Lord. And that oxygen mask, it's so interesting because when you go on the plane and they tell you to put your mask on first and then the child next to you, I always thought that's so weird because we often want to just go to our kids, help them first. And if something happens to us in the process, oh, well, at least they're taken care of, right? But that concept really stuck with me that if I take care of me and if I wake up in the morning and I do what I need to do for me first thing, then I'm going to have something to give to them. But if I don't take care of me, they're going to lose two parents. Mm-hmm. And it may not be physically, but they're going to lose me in all the other ways. And so I knew that I had to stay strong. One of the things that I did, and my friends and family did for me, is on day number 5, we completely redid my bedroom. And that was hard for my kids. They grew up in that house. But I couldn't be in that room any longer and sleep in there at night to have it be what it was. I needed a sanctuary. And so there was furniture donated. People came in and painted. Wow. It was a makeover, complete makeover on day 5. Now, some people may not do that. That may not be the thing that they needed. Right. But I knew for me to be healthy, I needed to wake up in the morning in a place that my husband hadn't touched. Wow. Because the rest of our home, the rest of our life, the rest of everything hurt so much. I needed to wake up in a fresh place. And so I did that, and I thought I might regret it because I changed everything in our room. Yeah. But I didn't. And it became my sanctuary. It was like waking up in a bed and breakfast. It was all white and clean and beautiful. And to this day, I still have all the same things in there. And it became a space that I could wake up fresh and then go out that door and then handle all the other things that I had to handle.
Yeah. I just can't imagine having to continue to handle things while dealing with this. You've said that that was just the hardest season you've had to walk through, widowhood. What was the hardest thing about it?
Oh, there's so many. I think some of the things that we don't talk about in being a widow is, yes, you lose your husband, and that's huge, but you lose all the dreams. You lose the comfort, the comfortableness of a family. We were a family of 5, and then we were a family of 4. But the dreams are huge. The comfort, the feeling like you know what's going to be tomorrow or the next day or a month from now. And now all of a sudden, you don't have any of that. And I used to say, I'm an artist, and so I am very visual. I see in color. I love color. But when he died, when I would close my eyes and think of my future that used to have a lot of color, a lot of hopes and dreams, it went completely white. It literally went white. I would close my eyes. It was not darkness. It was just a white canvas. It was like everything had been wiped clean. And that was very scary. Yeah. It was very scary to me.
How did you deal with it?
I prayed a lot, and I really leaned into the Lord, and I was like, Lord, what are you doing? Because I knew he wasn't going to waste any part of it. I knew he wasn't going to waste it. And so, Lord, if this is the life that I have, if I don't get to have my husband, if I don't get to have the dreams that we made together or had together, then what is it? What are we doing here? Like, because I used to say, if there's no hope, right, then I'm just going to move to Hawaii and drink Mai Tais. Like, why forever, for eternity? Like, what are we doing? There has to be a purpose to all of this pain. And so I took things one day at a time. The Lord brought a ton of people into my life to help me with the practical, with the kids, with the bills, with all the things. And one moment at a time, I was able to just put one step in front of the other. And with the Loft ministry that I've directed for 8 years, that's to teen girls, and I continue to do that. Mm-hmm. And so by pouring into other people to say, I can relate to your pain. I can share my story and help somebody. To just not sit on it, mm-hmm. but to share it, to talk about it. And I've been vocal with my story since the moment Jeff died, to just say, wow, so many of us are hurting. And I was the first widow in all my friends. And so I felt very, very alone as far as people being able to understand. But when we share our story, I feel like it helps us put those little baby steps in front of the other. And then before we know it, a year's gone by. And we go, oh my goodness, I made it. I made it a year. Now I made it 2 years. And that really helped to keep going.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's the purpose in the pain?
I think the purpose in the pain is to help others with their pain. Absolutely. And to give God glory in that. If I had rolled over and just quit on life, just said, I'm done, I quit. What would that have spoken to all those teenagers, all those girls that when everything was good, I was constantly saying to them, but you can have hope. I know you're going through a hard thing, your parents are getting divorced, but you can have hope. Then I go through a really hard thing and I lose all my hope. What would that say to them? So I think when we share our pain and we share our hope and where it lies, then it helps others to say, okay, I can get through this 24 hours. We may not know about 48 hours, but if we can get through the first 24.
Do you think you learned a lot from those girls, those teen girls?
Yeah. Oh, a ton. So much from them. And their pain that when I wasn't able to relate, now I could. And not because they had been in my situation, but just that pain is pain. Mm-hmm. But when I was a widow, I thought in those first few months, like my pain is the greatest pain. Because our pain is ours, right? It's our reality. But now, a few years later, I'm looking back going, my pain was the biggest for me. But there's a lot of people hurting with a lot of other things going on. And I have more compassion now than I ever have. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like that you said pain is pain. It's not a competition on what is the biggest pain.
Mm-mm. Yeah. No. And being a single mom, that was another really, really difficult thing that I never thought about. And I never thought, when I was married, I never really thought about widows or how hard it was for them or single parents because I wasn't one. So it never really went on my radar. And then all of a sudden, in 10 minutes, I became a widow and a single mom. And my compassion and love for single moms and single parents it's off the chart. Because I know how hard it is. And some have it way harder than even I had it, you know.
You're remarried now.
I am.
And it's so amazing to watch your joy and see just like joy exude from you and like this contagious smile that you have. It just warms my heart. When you first lost your first husband, did you think you'd ever be able to find love again or be remarried, or those thoughts that you had?
Not at first. I didn't. And just reeling from, we were married for 22 years, lived in the same house, had our 3 kids there. And, but I think as my heart started to heal, I did want love again. And I'm a people person. I'm a partner. I don't even like cleaning the house by myself, so I knew that just the way I was created was I was created for a partnership. And so, yeah, I figured that eventually I would get married. And we got married in November, so it was 2 years and 8 months after the accident. And it's amazing. I love being married, and I love being married to my new husband, whose name is the same name as my late husband. So they are both Jeffs. And the name Jeff means heavenly peace, which is very special. Yeah, very sweet. That
is really special. Yeah. How have you found that peace?
Well, my relationship with the Lord, He is absolutely my peace. I don't know what I would do or how I would have turned out from that moment in March of 2017 if it wasn't for the Lord walking me through, for sure. There's no other way I could have done it. I would have been lost.
Was getting remarried difficult? Were there any, thoughts that you had about concern or loyalty or?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that in all of my life, I have never felt so loved and so judged in a season. So the season of widowhood was interesting because I felt so loved.
Yeah.
But I also felt so judged. And I put myself out there on social media, which is fine. I put myself out there to help other people. But then you start dating again, get engaged, get remarried, and there's judgment that comes with that. Is it too soon? Is it too much? What's it going to be like to blend a family? How are her kids going to respond? All those things. And I just had to keep my focus on the plan that God had for me. And so those things made it hard. But the actual dating, I only dated one person, and then I fell in love with them and married him. So that whole process was precious. And he's exactly who I needed and wanted at 46. I just had no idea that the Lord could give me someone that I needed at 21 and then give me someone new who I needed at 46. And He is the biggest blessing ever.
Tell me about having those 2 loves in one lifetime.
Yeah, it's kind of surreal. Sometimes it feels like a movie. I think what it's like, what I try to describe it like, because I never quite thought that our hearts could do that, so easily. But it's like when we have kids, when you have your first child, and then you get pregnant again, and you think, how in the world would I love, or how can I have enough love for this second child? And then you have the second child, and you're like, whoa, it multiplies. That love just multiplies. And your kids are so different, right? And it's similar to that. It's not exact, but it's similar that the love that I have for my new husband is completely a love that is for him. It is solely his love. And the love that I had for my late husband is completely and totally for him. And they're super different people, even though they have the same name. Super different people. But I think when I look back on my late husband, I will always carry sorrow for what was lost. But I know I'm going to see him again one day. And that love is so special, but it's almost like it's a chapter of a book that I can look back on and just smile and say, that was a really, really sweet chapter. And now I'm in a new chapter. I couldn't do that at first. It took a while to get there.
For all that, I want to go back to that comment about all the people judging you. I can't imagine trying to walk through the judgments as you've been, through the experience that you've had. What is something you did to get through it?
Oh, well, I struggled through it. And a lot of times the judgment, what feels like judgment, is someone else trying to love you by either giving you, some warnings or some, what they think is encouragement, but it's not, right?
Advice sometimes comes out the wrong way.
Yes, like when you're pregnant, people try to tell you how to have a baby. So it's that same kind of thing. But how to get through it? Well, I stayed focused on the inner circle that I have, the handful of friends that I have that have been with me for 20 years, that have loved me, that know me. And I would just go back to them, like okay, are we good? I'm good. We're good. And just double checking, like, do you see any red flags in my life? And if the people closest to me didn't see anything of concern, then I just kept marching forward.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. I love that tip. How would you describe grief?
Oh, that's a very good question.
Because
big.
It changes through time.
Yeah, it does change through time. I used to say that it's like an animal that you've never met until you meet it. Grief, I think, takes on its own, it's like it's its own person in your world. It's so big and so deep, and it's unique to each person, but it is always with you. So it's just, it's incredible. And like you said, it changes over time. Within, that first year, grief, I traveled a lot that first year. I loved to travel, and I was traveling to feel alive. But a lot of concern that I got from other people is, are you trying to escape your grief? Mm-hmm. Are you trying to run away from it? And I always was like, what? No, I can never escape my grief. It is like a person that comes with me no matter where I go. And I want to go somewhere where maybe I don't have to look at everything as grief, and I can look at it as living. And so I think it's just this incredible process that the Lord uses to refine us in that grief. And grief is hard, but it's not bad. It's part of our process. We have to have it in order to get through that sorrow, in order to get through that valley. It's just something that has to be faced. Otherwise, if we push it away, it just is going to eat us up. It's not going to yield anything good for us if we don't face it. Yeah.
Do you feel the grief come back at any point now?
I do sometimes. Yeah, I sure do. And it comes back in waves when you don't expect it. So a lot of times my kids' grief, when they are grieving, and theirs is, their healing is going to take a lot longer, I believe, because they realize that they won't have their dad here on earth. And so when they talk to me about their grief, that's that tidal wave of emotion that comes back, that realization again of what was lost. And then there's times with even getting remarried, little things that are similar to being married before. And I go, oh, that's how we used to do it, or whatever that may be. And sometimes that can bring up grief or sorrow. But I like to say that at first the grief is 24/7 for however long, and then it gets a little bit further apart, that distance changes. So whereas maybe I would have those tidal waves every day, now they're, once a month, or, it gets farther apart. And so life becomes a little bit easier to handle and a little easier to deal with.
What have you learned about yourself in all of this?
Oh my goodness, so many things. I definitely can withstand a lot of fire, which I didn't realize. I am much stronger now than I was before, full of compassion. And I felt like I was compassionate before. I felt like I was strong before. But this, hands down, was the hardest season I've ever walked through, ever in my life. And I think it was harder when we're carrying our kids through the same thing. My mom passed away in 2010, and my kids were very sad for however many months. It took me a long time to get through that. So that was just really my grief, walking through that loss. This time with my late husband, it was all four of us. Yeah. So I realized that I am so much stronger, more compassionate, and able to kind of see a bigger picture in life, that we are not promised tomorrow. So the gratefulness that I have to be married, I don't know if I'm going to be married again for a year or 10 years or 30 years, but I am grateful every day. I have a helper, I have a partner, he loves me, he loves my kids, he loves the Lord, and he is phenomenal. And so there's a gratefulness that I have now that I didn't have before. And so it's nice to live life thinking that, if today was my last day, I'm doing good.
So this has totally changed how you live day to day.
Totally. Yes, wow. Totally. And I feel silly for things that I get upset about, that I go to bed upset about or whatever. And I think, well, that's silly, because we don't know if we have tomorrow. We don't want to end our day being bitter or resentful towards anyone, So just, being grateful for the day and for what we have. It's amazing. It's huge.
Yeah. You started Not Just a Widow. Tell me a little bit about that. Starting that. Where'd that name come from? Not Just a Widow.
My new husband.
Really?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I was like, that's nice, honey.
Yeah.
I was trying to come up with a name. Well, when I became a widow and being the first one out of all my friends, I started meeting other widows on Instagram. So I started following people that were a step ahead of me. And because they were a step ahead of me, whether they had remarried or not, I was able to see their journey and glean hope from them. And so then I started talking to other widows. Well, people were messaging me. I still get messages all the time. When someone becomes a widow, I usually get a message. Can you please pray for this person? Can you reach out to her? What do I do as a friend? So I started seeing there's a ministry here. There needs to be some outreach here. And there's people, whether they're the friend of the widow that doesn't know what to do, or they're the widow themselves. And so I just knew that I needed to create a space where I could be an encouragement, I could share my story, and give hope to those that feel totally alone. And so Not Just a Widow came up. I was trying to think of all these names, but I am not just a widow.
Yeah.
I'm a muralist. I'm a minister to teen girls. I'm a wife. I'm a mom. I'm a stepmom. There's so much more to us than our grief. And I think that was important for me to realize that my life wasn't over because I was a widow. There was so much more life to live. And then my new husband, when we were dating, he's like, what about not just a widow? Because you're not. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that. It gives hope. It gives hope that there's so much more to us than what happened to us. And so I wanted to be able to help others.
What has that been like, having that conversation, that open door to help others?
Oh, it is so good. It's a blessing. I weep with other people. I pray for them. I love them. We've had a couple get-togethers. There's about 11 widows. We get together and we just have coffee and we share our story. We meet like every few months. And that's been really great because I told him my only agenda is that they know another widow. That's it. Because it's different. The stories that we have, if someone else has never walked through that, we don't necessarily feel heard. So for the widows, when we all sit in a room and we're all sharing our stories of how our husbands passed away, all of a sudden we have some similarities in how we dealt with that or how we felt, and now we don't feel alone. So now those widows have connected outside of that group, and now they have someone to link arms with and walk their healing journey with.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and even though I'm married again, I still reach out. It's still a ministry that I love, and I still want to get together with these ladies because we're all little steps ahead of each other, or maybe a little step behind, but we can look at each other and glean hope.
When you first became a widow, do you feel like your friends kind of misunderstood you? They didn't. You had a hard time. They had a hard time identifying with you.
Yeah, I had a few friends. I actually have lost relationships. That was another hard thing about being a widow. Again, that inner circle changed a little bit, and my closest friends stayed with me during that, but I lost a few friends. And I think that I hurt people in the process, I'm sure, because you're trying to bandage yourself and your kids, so then you don't have time to be that friend that you would have maybe liked to be. And so then there's misunderstandings. And in the process, I'm not who I was. I'm different. And there's a little bit of that old Treva in me, of course, because I'm still me, but I've changed so much. And some people, the journey is hard. To be close friends with someone who's gone through trauma, it's hard, any kind of trauma. And so some people have to bow out because their life needs their attention. And so I have more understanding now, but there's been a lot of painful moments in the process. For
people who are listening and maybe are that friend, they're standing there wanting to help, maybe they don't understand the situation, what advice would you give them?
I would say, number one, don't feel obligated to fix anything, because we can't.
It's not fixable.
Right? It's not fixable. And I think before I would have thought, sit there and give advice. But really just sit there. We can sit with our friend who is suffering and just let them cry, let them process and talk it out. A listening ear is a treasure because it's really the person that's going through the trauma needs to get it out, whatever that looks like, the good, the bad, the ugly. So the friends that can just sit there and just love them and just be are the ones that will really pour into that person. And we can't fix anything. So any kind of thinking that we're going to give them some word that's going to just switch it around or heal them, it's not. They have to walk the journey by themselves with other people. They have to figure that out. But I would say to show up. I had a dear friend. She's actually my kid's godmother. And she just showed up all the time. She just showed up. She'd make us dinners once a week. And she said, I didn't know what to do, but I could come over and make you dinner. But she didn't know what to do. She did it beautifully because she just showed up and she let us be a mess. And she said it was hard to be in our house with all of our grief. She had to really take a deep breath before she walked through the door. And that's the part that's scary to people because grief it can be ugly and hard and heavy.
Did you experience kind of a dropping off of support?
Yes.
People are there right away and they know you're hurting, but then
Yeah.
their lives continue to go.
Yes. I say there's like a 4-month freebie window. Like you get 4 months for free and then everything else changes. There's like this 4 months where people know that you're hurting so deeply and you can't do it on your own. And everybody, rallies around to make meals, to help. And it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. And then people need to get back to their lives. And, but yeah, I saw that. I definitely saw that even in closer friendships, and then other people's lives change and they move on. And that's a hard part of grief is we're still holding on to what we lost. We're still trying to come back from that. And then everybody else, it seems like they just are moving on with their life. And we might feel forgotten sometimes. I felt forgotten sometimes. I definitely felt misunderstood. But the Lord always brought the right people in at the right moment. And sometimes it was a total stranger, like on an airplane. I've met a lot of wonderful people on airplanes when I was traveling that were that listening ear. They wanted to hear the story, and they were encouraging and wonderful, and then I never saw them again. So He always gives us who we need at the right moment.
Well, other than people around you, what are other things you did to get through that time when that drop-off happened?
I made sure that I was taking care of myself, for sure. So I definitely, like traveling, I love doing that. That really filled my cup. I would get massages. I would go to the spa. I started doing Camp 17 with Lou Crenshaw and Chantel. And that was huge. I started that actually in month 10 of being a widow and getting that physical activity out. I just started to find myself again. Because I think when we lose our spouse, we are one flesh. And so that rips apart. And now you're like, well, who am I? I hear this all the time from widows. I don't know who I am anymore. I feel like I lost my identity. And I can completely relate to that. So I had to figure out, like, who am I as a single person? Who am I at 44 years old? With 3 kids, I'm a single mom. This is not how I would have written my story. So what does this look like? And then I started with Camp 17 and I started working out with them and they started teaching me how to breathe and how to move, how to feel, how to let the feeling come out. And that was life-giving. It was life-changing. So I think that instead of just sitting at home and crying my eyes out for months and months and months, I was doing. Moving, yes.
What have you learned about love and relationships?
That we are created to love others. We really are created to love others. And yes,
so good.
We are. And if we could maybe just think that everybody else is doing the best that they can and we're doing the best that we can, maybe we could all love each other a little better, right? But there is enough room in our hearts to love a whole lot of people. And even being married again, like I said, I love my new husband so, so very much. And the love that I have for him does not overflow from the other. It is unique and special love for him. And then for people, Relationships, we're meant to connect and relate and have relationships. And if we can do that with people, we can open ourselves up to reveal a little bit more about ourselves, then other people can feel safe to share their story and reveal some of them. And it's how the Lord made us to be, to love each other, love one another, and hold each other up. And it's just so good when it happens.
For people who are listening or watching, what would you tell them, and they're going through some big grief, what would you tell them?
I would say to take deep breaths every day, to find someone or a few people that will gladly walk alongside you, and then to do the things that you enjoy. Try to find the things that you enjoy. Try to live that life. But it is okay to have those days where you just cry it out, where you're mad, we've got to feel it all. We've got to let the feeling out, or it just sits and festers. But to do it alone is not what we were created to do. We have to have someone in our life that can walk with us, so that when we're spending a month in our jammies, that friend can come over and go, you know what? Let's get dressed and go to the spa, or let's go do something. We need that partnership. And I would also say someone that is in intense grief, it will not always be like it is today.
There's hope.
There is hope. We can always take those baby steps forward.
For someone who is not dealing with grief, maybe hasn't ever experienced a loss like you have, what would you tell them?
To buckle up, because it's probably going to come. I mean, really, truly.
Yeah.
Every married couple, one of them will bury the other. I heard that one time and I was like, whoa, if you think about that. Every married couple, one of them will bury the other. And that's not something to fear, and it's not something to be morbid about. But for those that haven't suffered grief, they will. Whether it's the loss of a job, the loss of a person, the loss of a house. It will come because we live in a broken world where there is much loss, but there is much hope as well. And so that's what I would say, to just be prepared. It will come. I'm always shocked when it comes, and I've suffered through a lot of grief in my life. I like to say I'm a professional griever because I've lost so many loved ones in my life. But it seems like every time it comes around, I go, whoa. But we live in a broken world, so it's going to come. So let us be grateful for today. If those that have not suffered grief, be that friend to someone else. Be grateful for the day that you have. Let's not take anything for granted. Yeah.
I wish we had more time.
I know.
You're probably excited to stop getting questions. But the last question I want to ask you is the question I ask everyone. Your number one tip to finding more joy in the good, the bad, and the in-between.
I would say look at the blessings in our life every day. If we are thankful every day for the blessings, if we can count 3 blessings a day, that is going to give us joy. That is going to put a smile on our face. And so I'm trying to do that, trying to practice that and be consistent with that, to find all the blessings, the things that bring me joy. And it's very good. We are all very blessed.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I just adore Treva. I'm so thankful she came on the podcast to share her experience, and hopefully there's information you can glean from her. And I will post all of her information in show notes. You'll be able to find that there. Thank you so much for being here on Happiness in Progress.